Hello, at least I'm in the right place.
You are?
Because I was starting to freak out because I was just going on pure faith.
Well, that's this entire conference, Marie. It's
I know. That's why I feel so bad. Because I was like, literally, I signed in, I was here, and I said, wait a minute, am I supposed to have a Zoom link? Like, what the hell? I'm sorry. No, stop. I didn't mean to say that. You're recording.
Don't worry, we're cutting the first 15 minutes off. You're fine.
Oh my God, I'm a dumb.
No, we're gonna cut the film, so all the beginning stuff will be. I have a great intern that's his job right now.
Clean it up. Clean it up.
Clean it up.
Well, I'm just glad to be here because we all miss each other. That's the first thing.
Very, very much so. It's 2 years in a row to not be able to see people. It's just, that's too much. It is too much.
And it's bad enough that Delta's got my money.
Right.
and they're not giving it back. Because I almost thought about it. I said, oh, I might use that. And I said, what? I said, do I want to die?
I understand that.
Oh gosh, just the anxiety of it probably
Oh,
would kill.
I got my second shot 2 days ago.
Good for you. I'm trying to get my first one. I mean, I waited, and I mean, friends told me that all I had to do was say that I was an educator. I don't have to say what grades.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, well, no, let me wait a little while, but now I'm ready.
Yeah. It's helpful to everyone. If we all get it, then together we can get through this. So
early on, I was thinking about first responders and all that, and people that might not have access.
Right.
But I think I waited long enough. I can get in line.
You have. It's now time for everybody to do it, and then maybe we can,
move.
Do something normal.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, for some people, it hit me like a ton of bricks, that second shot. Like, I feel better today, but 24 hours.
Whew. Thanks for telling me, because that's another thing too. I wanted to time it around the time that I could have.
Get it after the conference, and then they told me, oh no, that's not an option now. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna not get it. So, well, if I'm in a fever dream,
out of line completely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll be in a fever dream, and that's just how it's gonna be.
Let me take a bite of my bread.
Okay. Yeah, I went and made a sandwich real quick. I actually had 45 minutes this time. So,
well, here's the deal. I've decided the content of what Dr. Hayden has is so powerful that I do want to show that it's like roughly 14-minute film.
Okay.
Then I have commentary, but to make things easier, I decided I'm not going to try to rush and put together a PowerPoint because I messed up. I had it on another device and I didn't back it up to anything. And,
hey, we are all doing the best we can right now. I mean, yeah, no, I think that's fine. And Ann Chesky Smith, who's going to, I'll be in the background, but I want to.
That's all I needed is I've got somebody who can show.
She can play it. She's on a PC, so we're good to go on that. I'll be in the background if there's a problem, but I've got all 5 sessions up at one time.
Oh God! Oh my God!
Yeah, it's a thing.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's
Are you ASA staff?
Yes, I'm the office manager.
Wow.
I am.
There's somebody there. Hey. And don't be overly impressed. I'm this beautiful Airbnb, so I gave you a really beautiful backdrop.
That is gorgeous. I'm a little jealous.
But this is not me 24/7.
Well, you can just pretend it is.
Okay. I'm going to put my video just on mute because I am eating. But I'm here. Just for laughs or giggles. Don't y'all feel like when you do this, that you're in a submarine somewhere? I don't know why. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I don't know what the real world looks like anymore. I see everything in 2D. Like the real world doesn't exist anymore. Yeah.
I'm going back to my sandwich.
Okay.
Like you had to see me to hear me.
See anybody else out there? I can't tell anything here.
We're just taking a break.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
Hi. So you're live, eh?
see you.
Yes, finally.
Whew. So you got my message about going first, right?
Yeah, I got it. And your message is you have problems, so like you got your problems resolved, so you're in good shape, eh? All right, then. I'll
Battle
take a
is
break then.
being seen and heard.
All right.
Now, what I say, I take full. I'm gonna say that. First of all, you're retired, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I take full responsibility for all my comments. But I
Hey.
think that we're good. Hey, we. I shouldn't even say that. I won't even say that your name is anybody else.
I'm okay.
Well, we're gonna have a really good conversation because I know that there are people who are planning on coming. So
All right.
it's gonna be really good.
Okay, then. Well, I'll let you go back to your break and come on at appropriate time.
All right, yeah, because I'm trying to eat this biscuit.
Okay. All right. Enjoy.
All
right. See you.
See ya.
Right.
Is anyone in here? Hello?
Yeah, we're all just kind of taking a little break
Okay.
so that you
Okay.
don't hear us chewing our lunch.
Right.
Hello, everyone. All right.
Greetings.
I'm
Greetings.
just making sure you weren't having any problems.
Seems to be okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Are you all ready to get started?
I think I am. We'll see.
Yes, ready,
Ready.
willing, and able.
Okay.
Ann, share the slide.
And you all
So
know,
are you,
I'm
sorry,
sorry.
are you all seeing the session panel slide that I'm sharing?
Yes,
Yeah.
I see it.
Okay.
Yes. And I was gonna just, you guys know that Liz is not going to be with us, right?
Yes, I got that. Yep.
Okay, I was just trying to make sure, because I didn't know, I haven't been in this conversation before, but I knew, we knew, but yeah.
Let's see. Ann, are you on there? Can you unshare that panel slide? Let's see. There we go. Thank you. All right.
Hi, Meredith McCarroll.
So good to see y'all.
Good to be seen. My stress level has just gone down. Just, okay, I'm in the grid now. I'm in the grid. Whew, what a, oh.
Are you all going to share slides or do you want me to do that on my end?
I thought you were going to do it.
And we're starting with which?
It's Wilburn. It'll be mine will be first. You have the inserts, right? You have the slides, but we're not ready. Yeah, we're not ready for sure yet.
Okay.
And you're going to start with the next slide. Yes, and I did in the note that I have to you, I didn't indicate that when to close that slide, so I'll do that verbally. The rest of them, I have inserts on the script that tells you when to close and open them.
Okay. Are you seeing the full screen slide right now or are you seeing the PowerPoint?
I'm seeing the PowerPoint.
Okay.
We're both there. Yeah. Yes.
And Dr. Hayden is going to go first, then I'll make a few comments and then we'll just show the video. And then I'll come back. So I'm,
Right. You can
mine
close
is
this,
very simple.
you can close this slide now. Are we ready to slide go or are we waiting? I take it we're ready to go. Then I will
Yeah,
start.
we're ready to go on my end. Yeah.
Okay, then I will start. Welcome to panel 5. Our conference theme is part of the BIPOC Understories from Black Western Carolina and Community Elderly Voices from late 1980s oral histories. I'm the convener and one of the panelists. Elizabeth Harper, who is with the city of Asheville, will not be joining us today. Liz was a special digital collection librarian and assistant professor at Western Carolina University. She is responsible for the three of us coming together. It was through her work of posting all the narratives from the 1987 to 88 Western Carolina Western Tomorrow's Oral History Project. I am forever indebted to her for having made that possible. Marie Cochran is a community strategist and founding curator of the Appalachian Artist Project and the Liam Bradley Visiting Professorship at Duke University Center for Documentary Studies and UNC Chapel Hill Department of American Studies. Marie was born and raised in Toccoa, thank you, Georgia, which sits in the foothills of the Appalachian region. Her BFA is from University of Georgia and MFA from the School of Art Institute in Chicago. She received a postgraduate NEA fellowship in museum education at the Art Institute of Chicago. Recently, she was honored by inclusion in the prestigious Southern Women, more than 100 stories of innovator, artists, and icons published by HarperCollins Press. My name is Wilburn Hayden, Professor Emeritus and Senior Scholar at the School of Social Work, York University, Toronto, Canada. I was raised in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, also in the foothills of the Appalachian region. My BA is from St. Andrews University in North Carolina. My MSW is from University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and my PhD is from University of Toronto. Many years ago, I was president of the Appalachian Studies Association. These days, my major projects include speaking, researching, teaching, and writing about Black Appalachians and Black Canadians. You will see some of my work I'm doing at my website, wilburnhayden.com. I will present my paper first, and Marie will follow with a film and presentation. The title of my paper is Discrimination Understories from Black Western Carolina, early 1900s to 1980. This paper focused on Appalachian history of segregation through a critical race theory, CRT. Critical race theory is used not only to understand past experiences of Black Appalachians, but as a tool for creating strategies for future change. Narratives within critical race theory defines individual voices essential to building knowledge for change. Critical race theory positions racism as a key element driving Black experiences within the Western Hemisphere, more particular, Appalachia. It listened to the voices of Black Appalachians through a lens of oppression and 5 barriers that must be addressed for racial change. Racial change is seen simply as increasing opportunities and quality of life for Black people within an equitable society. The time period of the paper is 1800s to 1980, roughly starting with third generation of slavery who lived under Jim Crow. Slavery is the foundation of economic prosperity in all the Western nations. And this is where the first slide could be inserted. And I know you can't read this, but slavery is the foundation of economic prosperity of all Western nations, justified by racism and enforced after the end of slavery through racial segregation. This table lists the 42 current Western Hemisphere countries and their dates for abolishing slavery. It started as a project in which I was trying to determine when slavery started in the Western Hemisphere. That was very difficult. So then I moved to look at when it was abolished, the assumption being you cannot abolish something that you didn't have. I know you can't read it, but trust me, this is a date. All the countries in the Western Hemisphere abolished slavery at different times. During colonization, all European settlements of the Americas used enslaved Africans to form and grow their new colonies. As within the Western Hemisphere, slavery existed within all regions of Appalachia. Through oral histories, the paper examined Appalachian segregation as one of the products of racism within the first 8 decades of the 20th century. End slide. We're not ready for the next slide. We're not ready for the next slide. The oral histories were collected in 1986 and 1987 through a project sponsored by Western Carolina University, Western North Carolina Tomorrow Black Oral History Project Collection. It employed 3 local Black residents to conduct the interviews with Blacks who were 70 years of age or older. The total number of interviews was 67. The voices from the oral histories are presented through 8 themes: church, employment, hospitals and healthcare, housing and community, military, public accommodation, schools, and social interactions. I would start with the first theme, racial segregation. Well, actually, I'm going to talk a little bit about segregation. Fegan defines a racial group as, quote, not something naturally generated as part of the self-evident order of the universe, but is a social group that persons inside the group or outside of the group have decided it is important to sing out as inferior or superior, typically on the basis of real or alleged physical characteristics subjectively selected. Black Americans have been defined as racially different by white groups for centuries on the basis of certain physical characteristics, end quote. From 1619, when the first recorded appearance of Blacks in the U.S. colonies, Black people labored under the assignment as members of an inferior racial group. At the birth of the new nation, and I'm quoting, Thomas Jefferson was the first prominent American to speculate that Black people may be innately inferior to Europeans. Until then, most enlightening figures believed that differences between groups were not born, but due to environmental factors. It wasn't until Jefferson introduced the radical new ideals of liberty and equality that slavery had to be justified, and prejudice against the enslaved began to crystallize into a doctrine of white supremacy. American freedom and the idea of innate racial differences were born together. And this is from historian Barbara Fields. Approaching the end of slavery in the U.S., white Southerners, as Jones Rogers in her work 2019 cited in respect to white slave-owning women, quote, they had immersed economic stake in the continued enslavement of African Americans, and they struggled to find ways to preserve the system when the Civil War threatened to destroy the institution of slavery and their wealth along with it, end quote. Racial segregation as it was practiced during slavery emerged post-slavery as important for preserving the economic and social conditions of white supremacy. White supremacy fueled by racism set in motion through global racial prejudice and discrimination enforced historical and contemporary racial segregation. Though it was and continued to be practiced in North America, it is the Southern USA where it was maintained by law and social traditions in all aspects of racial interaction. The region of Appalachia, from New York State through Mississippi during most of the 20th century, practiced segregation ranging from traditional to legal restriction. The voices of seniors from Western North Carolina attest to segregation within the mountains. So my first theme is church. The churches in the region were segregated by race. Individual members and churches would attend services outside of their race. There were clear informal social markers of which white churches were accepting of Blacks attending. Both races would attend special occasions and community-wide events held by different churches. The first citation. So the choir members of the Black church would go to the white churches to sing. Now, did the white people come to the Black churches? Yeah. They used to come to Liberty Baptist Church in Silver. We used to go way back out. We used to go to Asheville and back out to Waynesville, back in a lot of these places because we had a quartet and they would invite us. We were scared to death. They were so nice, and we get there, they would have tables as long as from here to that kitchen, just adding, and then it gets sort of mumbled, waiting on us to come and eat. Who was the quartet? We used to go way out in the mountains. We didn't like going back in there, but they were nice. Were you paid for this? If we take it, but we just did it for, and then you can't tell what happened. The next theme is employment. For the most, jobs were segregated by racial tradition and formal and informal policies. jobs with the lowest salaries, or little or no chance of advancement were black jobs. The job types for races differ within regions within Appalachia. In one region, housekeeping may be a black job, and in another part of the region, it would be a white job. The first citation. Interview. Why are there so few blacks? On account of work. They didn't give them any work at the plants and things. They wasn't allowed to work in these plants. There was no work. No work for blacks. What about blacks in the coal yard? There were no coal yards then. So either you farmed or you left. Yes. Or did domestic work. Yeah. Or pickup jobs and things like that. Well, did the young people leave at an early age because they couldn't get work? Yeah, had to. Second citation. Where do most of the black people work in silver? At Western, up here at the college. So even though many of the younger people have high school diplomas, they aren't given office jobs? No, I don't hear of them given much. What's the other place of employment besides Western? I guess the hospital, C.J. Harris. What jobs are done up there? Maids and cooks, but I don't know of any blacks now, but that used to happen years ago. End citation. The third theme was hospitals and healthcare. During this period, blacks were refused admission to some hospitals. Hospitals that admitted blacks had segregated facilities, which were usually of poor quality and inadequate care. This was not always the case in all segregated hospitals. There also were a small independent black hospital. There were small independent black hospitals. First citation. Were black people allowed to come to that hospital then? Yep, sure. Were they on the same wing as the white patients? No. There was a separate. They were separate. Do you remember if the rooms had all the convenience that the other rooms had? Well, I reckon they did. What about treatment of black patients? They treated them all right. They treated them right. Second citation. After the hospital was built, were black people allowed to go to the hospital? Yeah. Was there a separate wing for black people? Yeah. Did you ever know or hear stories of black people being treated differently than white people at the hospital? You mean treated bad or good? No, I don't remember that. I know they used to put the blacks in the basement part, but after so long, they put them upstairs because I know I was in there. Whites were on that side and I was across the hall from them after so long. But that was after I was married. I can't remember back no further. And the next citation. Dr. Bacon had me in a room the night I went in, right next to the office, one of those nice rooms. When I came out of surgery and woke up, I was back there in that little room, and the room was built for them to hang coats and things. The little room, what they put me in. I said I would never go back to Swain County Hospital, so when I had surgery for cancer, I went to Silver. The final citation on this theme. We had one special room that was built especially or was assigned especially to black people. Now, if there was ever more than one at a time, I don't know what they would have done with them, but that's where they stayed, back in that room. That room. It was just one room. End citation. Housing and discrimination is my next theme. Discrimination and segregation in housing and communities were widespread within the region. In parts of the region, blacks and whites were neighbors, but the degree of interactions differed, ranging to being very close to little or no contact. There were cases in which a black family was able to buy property in a white area, but the white neighbors would move shortly after the black family moved into the house. Living in the same area did not result in building racial cohesive communities. When a single black family lived in white areas, the children would often play together in each other's homes. Often by the time children entered high school or puberty, the friendships would be ended. The pressure from white family members, peers, and community prevented the friendships from continuing. However, in the early years, there appears to have been no direct association of respect to race with the children of either race. First citation. And there was a white family living here at the time we bought it. They lived in here about 3 months, and after they found out we had bought it, they moved out. So we moved in. Next citation. You said there were several families out where you live in Webster. Now, were all these families black? No, they were white living around. Well, how did the two races get along with each other? Well, they got along fine. We played together. I played with white kids all my life. My mother would go to work for them, and she would take me. Me and the kids would just get out and play and climb trees and ride horses and wade in the creeks and play with dolls and things. I played with white kids all my life. Next citation. Yeah, black people. We were the only black family that lived there. We didn't know the difference, and they didn't know the difference. We never got lonesome because all we would either go to play or to the white kids would come over and play with us. So we didn't know the difference in black and white. I never have because I wasn't raised among blacks. When we moved right out here where my dad's house is now, that's the first time that we've ever lived in a black community. In citation. The fifth theme is military. Segregation was evident in both world wars. Black units were led only by white commissioned officers. Blacks were non-commissioned officers. In situations where soldiers of both races mingled, some war friends emerged. Those friendships did not remain once they returned to the USA. Racial segregation was also practiced in the foreign battlefields by soldiers and local residents. Blacks were usually assigned to low-level tasks such as digging foxholes, trenches, and latrines. A few were trained in specialized areas. When they returned to the U.S., they were not able to get a job in the specialized area. First citation. Even in the Philippines, it was just like it was over here. I tell you, it wasn't no difference. It was segregated over there as it was over here. So when you came back home, did you come back to Murphy? Yeah, I came back to Murphy. Did you have a feeling then that something wasn't right for the black man? Yeah. We could tell the difference just the minute we got back to America. Segregation again, see? But you were sort of in friendships overseas till you got back, and then you could feel it. The minute you got back to America, they separated. We came back to California, and you could tell right then segregation began again. Next citation. Yes, I didn't go into action. I was stationed in Kerner, Nebraska. At the time during the war, I was lucky to stay there. Could volunteer to go, but it was segregated. You know how that was. No, could you explain that? Yes, all blacks at one place and all that other another place. Everybody wasn't together. No, not in the army. Just like in this house and I'm in that house, white and black. Did you fight together? Oh, they finally got them fighting together. If I remember correctly, there were white troops and black troops. Right. During World War II. The white man, he was already gone to National Guard, and he was over you when you got there. Done made lieutenant, you see. But the black didn't have a chance to go at that time. Segregation. Theme 6, public accommodation. During this period, public accommodations were defined by race. Whites and blacks only areas and services were separated. Blacks came to know that segregation was the rule and accepted it as a just part of getting along. They read the situation and participated as they were expected to. In theaters, blacks sat in the balcony and whites sat in the main floor. Blacks usually had a separate entrance and off the main street or an alleyway. If blacks were served at restaurants, they were not allowed to sit in the main eating areas and were not allowed to enter through the front door. Blacks were served through a side window or a rear door. When riding public transportation, Black people had to move to the rear. In some buses, blacks would pay through the front door, exit, and then through the rear door, and then enter through the rear door. It was noted in one case of a white person giving up a seat to a black person recognized from their hometown. In another case, a restaurant, the white worker refused to seat a black person. The black person knew the owner on the way out and told him what happened. The owner fired the white server and offered to serve the black person, but the black person decided not to eat at the cafe. Often with segregated accommodations and services came poor quality or disrespect shown from the provider. The blacks tended to ignore the ill treatment, as in one case, the person knew that it was unfair, but had no choice but to accept the service. If there was an option, as in the case reported by buying gasoline only at a service station that permitted use of restroom, black individuals took the option. Also noted that there was objections to segregation through direct questioning to petitioning and attempting to get support by government to change laws. First citation. What about movies and restaurants? It was segregated. The blacks sit in the balcony and whites downstairs. Next citation. Let's go back further. You remember the days of Jim Crow? I know we couldn't go to the restrooms and couldn't go to cafes. If you want anything, you go in and you get it and go out. You couldn't sit down, things like that. What were the race relationships like in civil before integration? Well, you just couldn't go to theaters. You couldn't go in and sit down and eat. Next citation. We used to have to drive up to the filling station and ask, Morris would ask, could we use the restroom? If they say yes, we'll say, fill it up. If they didn't, we didn't stop there and then laugh. Now we go anywhere and eat and sleep if we want to. Certainly, I admire him for that. Next citation. What are conditions like for black people in Asheville when you first came? Were they segregated? Oh, yes. Asheville was segregated, greatly segregated through the 60s, you know. Next citation. When you came to Asheville and it was segregated, because it was probably segregated in Greenwood too, oh, yes. How did you feel about it? Well, now at 12 years old, you don't worry too much about. You just take things mostly like it is. And you must realize that time the family had greater influence on children, and you didn't hear too much about certain things because as they exist. And this was the normal things. There wasn't much said about what was going on. Everybody accepted the situation as it was. When I said everybody, that's just it. So there was nothing to be said about it. Particularly, you didn't think much about it. This was a way of life, and that's all. We would say, this is blacks and the whites. Seventh theme, schools. All the interviewees indicated schools were segregated by race. The white schools were better resourced and maintained. As cited, the length of school years was different between black and white schools. Black students attend fewer months during the school year than white students. Schools located outside of the city were elementary and they went to the 8th grade. Students continuing their education through high school would commute or move to a location that had a black high school. This could also mean leaving the Appalachian region. Not all black community members wanted to end segregated schools. Two reasons cited were mistrust of how black students would be treated by white students, teachers, and administrators. The second was identity and attachment to the history of black schools. One person was clear that the desire was equality over integration. They don't realize the struggle in citation. Next citation. They don't realize the struggle that you had to go through to get where you are today. No, they don't. As I said, we had a segregated school system. We, in my understanding, did not want integration. We wanted equality, but we didn't want integration. We loved our high school, and now it's an elementary school, and so many of them have been closed down completely. We respect teachers, even though they had their flaws. All right. We wanted was equality. If they had got a book at Fink, we wanted a new book at Darden. We need to get the slides caught up, please. We didn't want to, and they thought that was something. In other places, people were fighting to integrate. Here we could and didn't want to. Our children would not have to leave home to finish high school. I said this, your children are taught to do evil things to blacks. I told them to their face. I said, quote, now if you get too rough on my kids, I'm coming to see about it. We told them that. We'll come over there rough. And they wouldn't allow any reports in the day the kids started school. Chuckled. And we didn't. Black people went to school about 3 or 4 months. I'm sorry, next citation. Black people went to school about 3 or 4 months, 5 or 6 months. It wasn't any. How long did white people go to school? The whites, they went about 8 to 10. See, things were really different back then. And my final thing, social interactions. Interpersonal interactions. Interpersonal interactions range from close as a family member to absolute denial of the existence on the part of whites toward social contacts between races. Whites had a choice in monitoring contact that did not exist for blacks. For example, blacks had to have social contact for employment. During the time period, most of the employment for blacks was domestic service and food service, outside manual labor and unskilled day work. The work required supervision or direct contact with white people. With most people of both races residing in racial segregated areas, there was little opportunity for social contact. Many areas, especially residential within the region, were off limits to blacks who did not have a white sanctioned reason to be in the location. The penalty for interactions by law or tradition was prohibited or strictly monitored. For self-protection, black people were self-monitoring to ensure that the lines were not crossed by themselves. Young children played together. This was especially true when they lived in proximity of each other. There appears to be in play no distinction in respect to race. Adults were also known to visit other adults in each other's home. First citation. Oh Lord, well, I tell you there, you have to stay your distance. If you was a Negro, you'll stay your distance. You meet some nice white people, but still, I don't care who they are. They think Aunt so-and-so, all right, Uncle so-and-so, all right. But you better, when you think about it, you a nigger. And so you stay in your place. That's the main thing. Next citation. I say it's like this. You went with your group, colored went with the colored. White went with the white. It wasn't mixed like it is now. Asheville wasn't. The colored people didn't have the way like they have now. But you stayed in your place. They let you know they were superior. Next citation. Yep, integration. Some of them so bitter against that, but as far as other relationship in Bryson City now, we had good relationship. As long as you kept your place, and we all knew where our places was, and we abide by it and all like that. We didn't try to go in places. As far as the white man, he wants to be our superior, and that won't work. I never could think it would work. They were always Mr. and Mrs. to us and all that. Our foreparents were aunt and uncle to them instead of Mr. and Mrs. Howe. They were kin, some of them. Claimed kin to you instead of calling you Mr. or Mrs. Next citation. Have the attitude of this? Is it probably a hard question? But what was the attitude of black people back then in terms of being segregated always? I mean, was that accepted? Or, no, was it accepted because you didn't have much choice? What did you think the general attitude toward that was? I think the general attitude was that, as you say, blacks as a whole didn't pay too much attention to it because you didn't have no other choice. So they just accepted that as a way of life, not too much fanfare. I know I didn't pay too much attention to it. You knew there were some places you couldn't go and just didn't try to go and just accepted it. In conclusion, Like the rest of the nation during this time, segregation and white supremacy were the norms. With few exceptions in Appalachia, separation of races was practiced by law and tradition. It is at its core, was racism, which dictated conditions and terms as to how Black and white people must behave. The oral history presented are snapshots from our past. There is no claim that these stories were true in all locations within the region, for there were exceptions from these experiences. The central conclusion from these stories is our past as Appalachians included segregation. Creating racial change must include coming to terms with past practice based on racism and white supremacy. Final slide. It's a whole other thing the Black man did, and he didn't get his rights for it. It's a whole other thing that he had to do to come up through life. But now he began to get his rights for him. If he got it up here, now he can get it. But they held it back from me all the time back in them days. For he didn't have he didn't have the what you call like they have nowadays. They own his rights. You know, the white man will hold you back if you can't. If you don't have nothing to stick against him at all the time, he will keep you back. You got to have something to let him know that he can't. He'll try his best to keep you going back. Always been and always will be. Thank you. Now Marie will now start. There's no sound.
All right, now I'm back. There's so much, and I'm so grateful for Dr. Hayden's work, and I'll explain more about the work that he has done. Let's just stop right there on the screen for a minute. Well, actually, I'll talk and then we'll stop. We're not going to start the film immediately. I want to give you some connective tissue because I want you to also hold on to any questions that you might have. First of all, I want to invoke the name of our third panelist in her absence, Elizabeth Skeen Harper, who's a former special and digital collections librarian at Western Carolina University's Hunter Library, because she would have provided the connective tissue that will lead you to this archive. I don't know if it's possible for us to do this with this format, but we need to put a link to that archive in the chat, or I will tell everyone that this is just a snippet of those themes and comments that Dr. Hayden had provided. Dr. Hayden, I didn't know that you were once the president of the Appalachian Studies Association, but both of us had been faculty members at Western Carolina University. And I'm really here to give you the backstory to this particular understory. When I came to Western Carolina University as a faculty member in 2006, I knew nothing about Dr. Hayden. I knew nothing about this archive. I knew nothing about the predecessors who were Black faculty on that campus. So I have decided in my time allotted to give the backstory that leads us to this archive, but also almost renames the panel by talking about the fact that we need to, in this moment, with the Appalachian Studies Association making a bold move to embrace anti-racism, to talk about not only the Black communities in and around the campuses where we work, but also talk about the relationship between the institution and those Black communities. The relationship between the Black faculty on those campuses and those Black communities. So I begin my backstory to what I will present by saying that when I came to Western Carolina University in 2006, there were 500 faculty on campus. I was the only African American, but I didn't know about Dr. Hayden. I didn't know about all the people who had come before me. There were 2 African faculty on campus, but I was the only African American. When I looked around at the Black community and started looking for those churches, I found 3 churches that were still in existence. Dr. Hayden mentioned Liberty as one of them. Another was the first AME church, AME Zion Church, which was off campus. And I'll get to that in just a moment. I also started attending Martin Luther King events, and I met the late, great Victoria Casey McDonald, whose family members are some of those interviewees, because we didn't mention family names or anything in those clips. So you had the Casey family, the Rogers family, and all of the Love family, all of these Black families that were known of in the community. And Victoria Casey McDonald invited me to civic organization meetings, Martin Luther King events. We worked together in the community. I also found out that she was one of the first homegrown Black students to integrate Western Carolina University. Follow me with this. And then there was another staff member who I befriended by the name of Rebecca Saunders in the Student Affairs Office. And I began to ask questions about the Black community in and around where I worked. And one day we took a walk around the campus, and we walked up the hill towards Roberson Hall. And it was that day that I found a marker for the Mount Zion AME Zion Church that said that there had been a church on those grounds and that it had been moved to build Roberson Hall. Long story short, I would later find out that the Dr. Hayden that we're talking to right now, as a faculty member, had been responsible for the creation of that marker. Not only had the church been demolished, but approximately 100 graves had been unearthed for the construction of that residence hall. So I created the following film, and I want you to watch it. And as Dr. Hayden talked about the voices of those people, you'll be looking at the ancestors of those people. So let me just read a little bit about this film that I created. It was actually a part of an exhibition that I had at Western Carolina University's Bartow Performing Arts Center, Fine Art Museum, March 21st through May 10th, 2013. Testify Beyond Place pays homage to the Mount Zion AME Episcopal Zion Church, as well as its relationship to Western Carolina University. The year 2013 marked the 85th anniversary of the process of removal to make way for expansion of the campus. A marker at Roberson Residence Hall designates the original site of the church and approximately 100 graves. Testify bears witness to the event and provides a context for dialogue about a shared history and honors the resilience of the congregation. I was a producer director. Cinematography was done by former student, and sound design, original music, Kevin Slaman. And I worked on editing with Kevin, and also with assistance from the Mountain Heritage Center. This is not a documentary, so this is not going to be a Ken Burns moment. It's going to be more of an artistic, evocative film. So bear with it. Use this as your Zen moment. It's approximately 14 minutes. And after it's complete, we'll return and have our open conversation. And I'll tell you a little bit more about how all these things tie together. So we can start the film.
you were free in regard to righteousness. What fruit did you have then in the things of which you are now ashamed? For the end of those things is death altogether.
Do you not know that the good you present yourselves as slaves to obey, nor that one slave that you obey, whether of sin to death or obedience to righteousness?
We are graveyard sons and daughters. And we only have just a few more rising, let alone the setting of the sun, but just a few more rising. And so we too, like our fathers and our mothers before us, we too must go beyond that river, somewhere over there where these old souls of ours will find rest.
And for the sake of time, we can actually leave the credits and go back to the establishing shot, if we can do that for the film, just so that you can see it. Can you go back just for one moment? It may be difficult. Let's see if we can do it. If not, that's fine. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yes, because in lieu of a slide presentation, I wanted you to be able to see the actual faces of the people from Mount Zion AME Zion Church. Keep in mind what Dr. Hayden said. Let's just say for a moment about the fact that there were 3 churches in that community. So this is just one story of many stories. These are the ancestors of those 70-year-old individuals that were selected, that were interviewed. The man that's in the front row, third over with his hand clasped in his lap, is Mr. Will Rogers. who's underneath the letter B, and he is the head of the board of trustees. The man in the back, he's probably in front of the woman with the hat, is the minister, and I can't recall his name. But you can see all of those trustees were the ones who had to negotiate that decision to remove the church. There were 1,000 different issues that we could talk about from those excerpts that Dr. Hayden brought up. But the main thing is choice. The limited amount of choices that people of African descent, you can see all those different phenotypes, different skin tones, all Black people, as we define the term today. And they did not have a choice to move, to destroy their church and dig up their family graves. The real challenge for us to look at oral history is to put things into context, because officially Western Carolina University acknowledges that they were paid for their land, but they had no choice. And we can get into that just a moment. Same thing with some of the comments about children being able to play with each other without incident. But what happened when they got to puberty? What happened when the choices that they had for their lives became limited when they became adults? When they decided to get married? Who they decided to get married to? So with that in mind, you can put me back on screen. And I know there are many questions that we probably have, and I would love to engage them to help guide our conversation. I don't know if we established who would look at the chat and help us with that process.
I'm not sure.
Hey, so I'm looking at the chat right now. There's, but I think people can unmute themselves and speak. But right now, there are no questions in the chat. But Meredith did put the link to the digital collections at Western in there.
Oh, I can start us off because it ties these two different disparate things together. In the absence of Liz, let me just continue my story. So, as I said, I arrived 2006. I found the marker. I started asking questions. Then George Frizzell, who was at the Special Collections librarian, told me that there was a collection of oral histories that were not available to the public. We'll get to that in just a moment, because this is very important. And so I began to ask different people in the community about it. They were slightly aware of it, that there had been people that they knew of who had been interviewed. And then after I left Western, because I'm stubborn, I decided to find out who had created this monument. It's very small. Unfortunately, I don't have a photograph. I will be writing about this for the journal, so don't worry. Bronze plaque, all it had was words, to the point where in the context of construction, you might think that it was a utility pole or something, some other thing, if you didn't stop to look and read it. But I talked to another dear friend of ours, Curtis Wood. And I'm so glad that this came to me, because as we reconvene, he is one of the founding guiding stars for this organization. He passed away last year. Curtis Wood, history professor, many of you may know from Western Carolina University. He told me about the fact that I should look for Wilburn Hayden. I did a Google search. Through that Google search, I found that Dr. Hayden was at York University. And remember this, Dr. Hayden? I sent you an email. And that is how this came together. And from that point on, George Frizzell retired, Elizabeth Skeen Harper took her position, and she started that hard work to unlock the door of that archive. Take it up from here, Dr. Hayden, and tell us what happened.
Well, it was an interesting journey. I tried for years to get access and kept getting blocked, and it wasn't there. And when Liz called me and said that, you know, she's going to do it, she's going to post them, and it did. And so now
she did something that nobody else had seemed to be able to do.
No,
because what I had been told was that the people who had been interviewed had not signed release forms. That's what I was told. And quite honestly, I didn't know exactly which excerpts Dr. Hayden was going to choose, but part of it is now that you have the link in the chat, is that some of the things that were said were very provocative. Dr. Hayden was very conservative, whatever you might say, in the context of, but because people were name by name.
Yes.
Would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, I couldn't understand why I was being blocked from getting access to it. And I suspect that was one of the reasons that, you know, the people were really letting know how things were. And there were people in that time period who didn't want that to be known. You remember, the families in the region, for the most part, are still the ones related from the others. So there were a lot of that going on, and it was near impossible. I mean, I think 3 decades I think I tried to get access and didn't have it. And it was a yeah. But Liz came through, and like you say, everybody can see it now, and you can see exactly how it was said. And you know, in my selection of citations, well, yeah. But I know if you want to go to it, you can find out the full text, and you can see how plain spoken people were and how much they really nailed it. It was racism and white supremacy, which is very much a part of Appalachia. And that history has always been sort of downplayed. But the region speaks for itself, especially from the voices.
Right.
We do have one question in the chat, which you kind of just addressed, but how did the two of you connect, and what has that connection enabled? And then the second part, how might connections like this happen more freely?
Well, let me just say this, because I'm glad that we had the opportunity to do our presentation this way. I'm going to represent myself by saying that we need to do more we need to tell more about the backstory and the personal aspects of this research. I think as a person of color, very often we leave that out because we've been indoctrinated to be objective. And I think, you know, it's also the particular educational experience that we've come through. Because if we have in the past revealed too much that's personal, we're told that our work is not scholarly or it's not academic. And there will be another version of this, by the way. I feel as if, to a certain extent, I made the clear distinction to hold back a little bit because I want to, in a perfect world, be able to sit in a room with some people and talk about this. But at least you have access to the link. You know Dr. Hayden's commitment and deep connection to this. You know my connection to it as an artist activist. But I will invoke something. I just heard a wonderful presentation by Patrice Cullors, who's one of the 3 founders of the Black Lives Matter movement. And she is also an activist and an artist. And she invoked this term that I'm now embracing, that she has an abolitionist aesthetic. I have an abolitionist aesthetic. Just as Dr. Hayden was talking about using critical race theory, that is just as valid as any type of postmodernist theory that I might attach my work to, because I have a motive, and it's also to break clear of racial oppression and institutional racism and white supremacy. We're at that point now. We can do that and claim it without any hesitation. So by linking this monument to the archive, I think we can talk more about not just the past, but the here and now. Western Carolina University just hired a director of Africana Studies, and they have a minor. I don't think that gentleman knows anything about this yet, but he will. But unless it's people like us who are, unfortunately, no longer associated with the institution, push for it, the institution does not have an honest institutional memory. I did a search just last night. That's what kind of broke me down from doing the traditional thing, of Mount Zion AME Zion Church. And let me just say, I was disappointed. That's all I'll say for right now. But we're going to do better. We're going to connect that new director with this work and the community to this work.
Well, we have only about 4 minutes left, and we just had a couple more questions come through that I'd like us to touch on. One was for Dr. Hayden. Do we know the history of who conducted those oral histories and why they were originally conducted?
Yes, that's part of what Liz's presentation would have addressed in there. I can't recall the three people named right off, but yes, we have the full record, and it would have been the full presentation. Really gives you really in-depth understanding of all how we came about it. And it was a project of Western Tomorrow under Western Carolina University, and it just, yeah, there's a record, and Liz has the record, and she's compiled it. And maybe one of the things that, going back to the earlier question, perhaps one day we can put together, three of us can sit down and try to get a manuscript or something that moves it from a thought back in 1980 into where we are now. And like Maria, I'm really committed, not just about history, just because of history, but what does it tell us about how we need to move forward in the future? And that's why I'm into it, is to bring out where it's from. And so hopefully we can try to get the whole record out there, including all the various attempts of trying to prevent the record from being presented.
And the last question we've got on here was for Marie. What was the response on Western's campus to your film?
Oh, wow. How can I say this? Timing is everything. And at the time, there was no real understanding of the value of the work. Because number one, I feel that, it is this continuing theme, local is not value, no matter what you talk about with colleges and universities. That's a continuing theme, in the model of higher ed now. The first thing is, now I don't know what it is now with COVID, but it was prior to that international, global. So I had an incredible response from members and family members, and I would have loved to have shown you the photograph of the Mount Zion, AME Zion church family, the Liberty Baptist Church family. People were so grateful. And to have them literally be able to come on campus, park, walk in, designated parking, walk into the Fine Art Museum and see the piece, because the piece, most of you are probably looking at it on a screen, laptop, whatever. It was projected as if it were theater style viewing. So it was in an exhibition where I had objects, and you could sit down and on almost like a bench and see the work projected in the space. And on either side, I had like silhouettes of that photograph that you saw drawn on the wall. So that was the art piece. But for the opening, we had a separate space where they literally just saw it projected as a film. That was wonderful. And at the time, we had a very progressive president who had just gotten to campus. And I was not able to make that connection because because the conversation hasn't been had. There's not been an apology made or an acknowledgement from the upper ranks about that incident. Because as it's framed on campus, it was a real estate transaction. Because very little is said about the graves that literally are across the street now in the new, 1930s. It actually was a structure that was designed and built by a Black architect. There's all that richness. And my goal, as Dr. Hayden said, is have a publication, but I also want to have an event on those grounds where the students who live in Roberson Hall can have something that connects them to that story. And I would love to work, I'll go ahead and give it away right now, with the Slave Dwelling Project with Joseph McGill, who goes to slave dwellings and has people sleep in those structures, have something out at night, project the film, because as you saw the film, we literally went to the grounds, filmed the actual site, then went all those places that you saw, those were literally inside the existing church. The actual, tambourine, the actual piano with the claw feet, all of those things. The intrinsic objects were from the Mountain Heritage Center collection that were just anonymous objects from that era, the hats and stuff like that, to give you a sense of the people. But the actual places were connected to the previous site or the existing site.
Well, we really appreciate you both and the incredible work that you're doing and drawing attention to these resources that are available, finally available to everyone. We are running out of time now, but I just want to say thank you on, I think, behalf of all the participants here in this I
want to give one more shout out if I can. One more shout out real quick.
Sure.
Okay, for one of my institutions, because I have two. I have Duke and I have the University of North Carolina. The Black Communities Conference is happening next week. # BlackCom 2021 at capital BLK, capital COMMUNITIES. Black Communities Conference next week, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Thank you.
Thank you all. And
Dr. Hayden, would you like the last word?
Yeah.
No, I just want to say I really thank everybody who helped bring this apart. Get the slides, getting us here. So I'm really appreciative. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Come Come see me sometime on the internet. Appalachian Artist Project. Thank you, Dr. Hayden.
Oh, thank you. Great presentation. Good.
It was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Mrs. Hey. You're on mute, but that's okay. I see your smile. All right. Have a wonderful day, you guys.
See you at another session somewhere. Guess my log out. I'm not sure how to close out of here.
Just leave up the top or bottom, just hit leave the meeting.
Or on my screen, it didn't show up that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why. I didn't see a lot of stuff that was supposed to be there. Maybe if I
Okay,
just
are you all
click the
done?
Yeah, we're done. Can you close it out for Amelia?
Thank you all. Pop over to the plenary if you can.
All right. Yeah.
All right.
Anne, are you still on?
Can you also me?